We can get to the bottom of things. I have prepared a brand new clean version of Home Assistant. I have pre-configured the Cuisine Lite, and I'll show you all my settings, including a repository on GitHub where you can download all the appropriate code. So first of all, in hassio, I have configured two things that you really need, some optional. I prefer to use the IDE instead of the configurator, and very simply because I can see the file structure, and I recommend that. I also have a Samba share that you can then connect to the Samba and edit the files in a preferred IDE or text app on a desktop, but it's unnecessary. But most importantly, the Mosquito broker. So let's have a look at it. All I have done is to populate it with the username and a password. It really doesn't matter what you put in there. I would try to avoid using admin or root. I use Mosquito because that's just the name of the broker. So, but it doesn't really matter. All the rest of the settings are absolutely as per configuration, as per the default configuration. We can see some connections here. The 172 is a connection from the Home Assistant. You don't need to worry about that. That just tells us that the Home Assistant, the whole interface here, is talking to the program, the Mosquito program. The Mosquito program is actually the broker. It's running on your Raspberry Pi as a separate program. It's not part of the Home Assistant. It's a separate program. It's configured through Home Assistant, but otherwise separate. If I trigger the button actually on the Cuisine, we should see the other connection, but at the moment it's not coming up. It doesn't really matter. So that's one thing done. If you have a look at this module, I have configured actually two things on it. So I can see the state of the button here. If you go to configuration, configure module, I'm using Wemos D1 Mini, very similar module to your Node MCU, but on my GPIO 5 I've got a switch, and I've put it says relay, but actually what it is, the switch controls the relay. If you had anything connected on GPIO 14, it would keep switching. The switch itself is the input effectively, and that would be an output. But what it does, if you display the relay 1 or configure relay 1, it will display it on the menu here. You don't need to have anything connected to the pins on the Node MCU, but over here you're going to see the state of it. Obviously you can see the state on the console as well, and that'll absolutely mirror what I'm doing here. I'm pressing the button. You can probably hear that I'm pressing the button, keep switching on and off. Same thing we're going to see if we go to the overview. On, off, on, off. In the status, this is the status button. You should see your Cuisine Lite in here. And maybe we actually called it Cuisine Switch, I just remember. But it's a small thing. If I go to the config, the Cloud9 configuration, I have my configuration YAML file and my UI Lovelace file. That's a new file you'll have to create, the UI-lovelace.yaml. And the only thing you need to create or is to add to your configuration, the YAML file, are these two lines. Lovelace, colon, no space before it, and underneath here you got two spaces, mode.yaml. It means that it's configured via YAML file. Settings above here are unchanged apart from calling it dev, so I don't confuse with my proper installation, but it doesn't really matter. The mqtt broker is here. You can see username and password set up here, the internal address, port, and my client ID. I put the home assistant. That's the iframe. You've got set up similarly to something else. And over here is my cuisine light. I think we call it cuisine switch. And this is the entity ID that will show up in the status over here. So if you call it cuisine light, it'll show up there as a light dot cuisine underscore light. If you call it cuisine switch, you can rename it here, switch, it will show up as a cuisine switch. Now if I rename it here and didn't rename it there, then it's going to disappear. So I'll rename it to light cuisine switch in here, save it here, and I go and I'll have to restart my home assistant, so it updates the value. Now you can see that this already shows up, and the reason for it is any changes to the Lovelace are pretty instant. You don't need to restart for the changes to appear. All you need to do is refresh the screen. But because the backend at the moment doesn't know the switch, it's showing as unavailable. Once the home assistant restarts in the background, it will pop up with the button again. It'll take a few ticks. Maybe connection lost, reconnecting. Hopefully it should be back very soon. In the meantime, I'll show you, I have created a repository on GitHub where all the settings for your configuration and Lovelace are here. So if you go in the configuration, you'll find it here. I'll update it to the latest version to update the cuisine into cuisine switch by the time you see it. I've got nothing in the groups, so you can delete that. The contents of the file you can delete because we are not going to be using that. We're going to be using instead the UI Lovelace, and the UI Lovelace is very similar to the groups, slightly different new titles. I suggest migrating to this because it will become the default UI. And now I've gone back, and voila, you got a cuisine switch here that works perfectly. Yeah, and it is here. There should not be any problems whatsoever, and I really don't know what has been causing the troubles. Oh, now I got my cuisine switch here. Yeah, let's refresh. No issues. Let's have a look at the broker. We got the connection from the home assistant, which is identified by mosquito, and I wonder whether we're gonna get, if I toggle the switch here, whether we're gonna see any connection from that. Probably no. We might see connection from the mqtt effects, but I'll need to create a new user or new profile. So def book address will be 192.168.1.63. My credentials most subscribe here. You should see a new user, yes, coming from my computer, and that's the other client. I would expect to see this cuisine switch to be as a client as well, but at the moment we don't see it, and it's not really a big deal. Perhaps if I issue the command to the cuisine switch power off, and maybe we will see it here. No, it is actually not, but it's not a big deal. So you can see it's not particularly difficult. To show you that this should actually control our switch as well. There you go. And yeah, if everything fails, I probably suggest to reinstall the whole installation of Home Assistant. Shouldn't require it, but I really don't know what is going on there. I suggest copying all the files I've got on the repository, just downloading them and sticking them into the WR files, or open. It's sometimes very good to click on the raw button, so you see just the code, which should copy correctly all the spacing, because as we've seen before in the paste bin, if you didn't copy it as a raw and you copied it as a file, some of the empty lines or the spaces before got shrunk and it didn't work. Always you can use the YAML lint to test your configuration that it's working. Seem to be introducing some new characters here which I don't particularly like. So maybe be careful. Anyway, hope it goes well.